Hello, everyone. Welcome to Career Circle's workshop, Common Resume Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. I'm thrilled to welcome you to this exciting webinar on tips and tricks, do's and don'ts, and how AI can revolutionize the way you create resumes and cover letters. Whether you're just starting your job search or looking to make a career change, today's session is designed to provide you with valuable insights and practical tools to enhance your job application process. We are currently recording this webinar to ensure accessibility for all participants. You can also enable closed captioning via your browser. We recommend using Google Chrome, where you can click on the three dots in the upper right-hand corner, click on Settings, and then Accessibility. You may refer to the screenshot in the presentation, reference a breakdown of instructions on how to access closed captioning on different browsers in the content section to your right, or reach out to one of our esteemed Career Circle employees in the tech support booth in the lobby to assist you. All of the resources that we discussed today and more can be located on the Content tab near the People and Discussion feed to your right. All resources and the recording will be emailed to you after the event. I repeat, all resources and the recording will be emailed to you after the event. Please make sure to watch until the end, as our amazing panelist has a wealth of knowledge to share. Before we get started with introductions, here's a QR code for our survey. You can run it on your phone and open it and share your feedback with us. We'll be doing a raffle with all respondents, and one of you will win a Career Circle tote bag. The winner will be contacted next Thursday, August the 21st. Wow, next Thursday, August the 21st. If you miss it, no worries. We'll send the survey in our post-event email too. But if you want to give us your thoughts, we would love to hear from you during the event. We'd love to be able to get that feedback from you. Now, with that being said, my name is Brittany Knowles, and I am the Learning and Development Specialist here with Career Circle. I have twisted hair in black, brown, and red. I have brown eyes. I am wearing a white blazer, and I'm currently sitting in my office. Now I'd like to pass it over to Ethan. Ethan?
Hey everybody, my name is Ethan Parker. I'm the recruiting manager here at Career Circle. I'm a Caucasian male in my 30s with short brown hair, wearing glasses, and today I have on a blue Career Circle t-shirt. And so getting us started here today as we talk through all things resume and making sure that we are fully up to speed, ready to rock on our job search. Our agenda today will consist of three things. First of which will be formatting the resume. So really making sure that we have everything buttoned up, ready to go and begin that job search. Second piece will be maximizing that job search potential with AI tools. So we'll talk through some additional specific prompts, some things that you can think to leverage when you're engaging with AI, and really doing the best that you can to ensure that you're utilizing all of the tools that are available to you in the modern age. Lastly, we'll be sure to make some time at the end of the presentation here for questions and answers. Make sure that we get some time to connect with each of you, get a better sense of how we can assist you more directly. And so when we look at formatting your resume, there's a couple key things that you'll want to keep in mind. And of course, we'll kind of go through each of these in more depth as we proceed through the slides here. But the biggest things that you want to make sure that you contain within your resume are, of course, your experience, your education, and your skills, and your contact information. So the biggest thing is making sure that you are making it legible and easy to read. As you'll see here on the data point listed on the bottom of the slide, recruiters tend to look at resumes for an average of about 7.5 seconds. And they're usually scanning for key highlights there. So it's very important that your resume is formatted in such a way that it lends itself to that scanning style. Now, we've gotten questions previously about total length of resume, what is and isn't acceptable. We do say that 2 pages are okay. We do recommend that if you do go to 2 pages, you fill out those 2 pages. And if you have to extend past those 2 pages, let's say you have greater than 10 years of experience, or even up to 15, if you do need to go to 3 pages, it is very, very important to make sure that you have that 3rd page completely filled out. But 2 page, I would say, is kind of the golden standard. Try to adhere to that as best as you can. Punctuation and grammar, of course, very, very important. Making sure that we run our spell check, make sure that there's no uh, things that would make you come across as unprofessional, not detail oriented. Just taking the time to make sure that you scrub those and really analyze it and make sure that it's good to go. We talked about contact information previously, but that professional email address is very helpful. Obviously, a lot of us here have access to the emails that we set up when we were younger. I myself still actively use that one, but mostly these days for like newsletters and such. In the event that you are using it for a resume, you want to make sure that you set up an email that is professional. Usually some template of like first name, last name, and a combination of numbers is perfectly acceptable. But more to the point, it's something that you have consistent access to and you can monitor for any responses to your applications. That experience section, we've gotten questions previously on kind of functional versus chronological resumes. For those who don't know, functional resumes just kind of list the core competencies that you've achieved in your professional career, whereas a chronological experience resume will list all of your positions in order as you kind of move between them in your career. The reason we say to do chronological is because it is immensely more readable for a lot of folks, and it kind of gives a better indication of where you have gone in your career. So let's say you started, and we'll use like grocery setting as an example. Let's say you started as a bagger or a cashier, and then eventually you moved up to a managerial role in the retail space. That is where you can kind of highlight that growth over time. So one, recruiters love to see that. Two, in the event that you don't utilize a chronological format, a lot of recruiters will sometimes view that as there's a possibility that you're hiding something about your experience, at which, not whether that's the case or not, you just want to try to avoid any red flags that you may present up front. That way it increases the likelihood that a recruiter will contact you directly for consideration. Lastly here, we have do not add personal information. The biggest thing here is you don't want to overshare, right? So let's say that you have a hobbies section of your resume. That can be a positive thing. Let's say you're going into IT support. One of your hobbies is building computers and setting up and troubleshooting and really running computers through that first initialization. That's pretty relevant for the IT support career path. But let's say you go through your hobby section, while you might have that, and instead of listing that as your hobby, you would list something like collecting cards or something like that, right? That's not really relevant for the position that you'd be pursuing, and thusly won't really help you in your job search. It's just kind of wasted space on the resume. So making sure that you do not add overly personal information, really, really important. And then even to the scope of your contact information, as you are going through that header of your resume and like highlighting where you live, things like that, we encourage folks to not put their detailed street address, just the city, state.
Ethan,
No,
I'm not able to hear you, but it might just be a technical issue on my end.
I was just about to say the same thing, Jess.
There we go. Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go from the top because I'm assuming that's where it dropped off. But
Yes, as soon as it went to soft versus hard skills.
okay, perfect. So we'll go ahead and go through some definitions here. We'll rip through what it looks like for your soft skills, what it looks like for your hard skills, and kind of how you want to present each on your resume. But namely, more than anything, the goal is to make it so that each of you kind of walk away from here ready to quantify what bucket each of your skills fall into. As far as the soft skills go, they are more nuanced. They're a bit more related to the way that you interact with your peers, colleagues, and even customers in a given space. They are very, very important to your overall career success and longevity, but there's not a lot of quantifiables that you can attribute to those in more cases than not. Examples of soft skills include communication, problem solving, team leadership, conflict resolution, things that are a bit more nebulous and maybe not super specific, but they are very, very relevant in a lot of career paths. A great example, if you're looking for conflict resolution, let's say that you, again, using the help desk example, have experience handling conflict resolution, things along those lines. That's a lot easier to parlay into help desk, because a lot of that job is handling escalations in the event that somebody is frustrated with a certain technological component. It is very important that you have the skills to be able to calm down the end user and really help them to understand, like, you're on their side, you're trying to assist them and doing the best that you can to come to a resolution. So soft skills, very, very important. They're those things that are really heavily tied to interpersonal interactions. Now, hard skills are very specific. They're kind of teachable abilities. They oftentimes are they're able to be very specifically measured and quantified. Think like proficiencies with scripting, programming languages, data analysis tools. They're very specific to the field that you're entering most of the time. And they do require some level of technical proficiency. We used coding as the example. Great example here is there are obviously a litany of coding tools and languages that are out there, from everything from the different languages being like Python, Java, JavaScript, to different IDEs that you might have proficiency with, VS Code, IntelliScript, anything like that, or IntelliJ. Data analysis tools, good examples of this would be Excel. That's a great specific hard skill. Depending on your proficiency, can qualify you for a lot of different things. For analysis specifically and visualization, you might have a lot of proficiency with Tableau and want to list that on your resume from a project perspective. So just very important to make sure that as you are beginning to parse your skills, you kind of know where to bucket each of those. And oftentimes in your resume, as you start to draw up that skill summary, what a lot of folks do will separate those kind of traditional skills versus those hard skills. The way that you verbalize that would be just a traditional skills summary and then a follow-up of technical skills. So you can kind of separate those and make it much easier for a recruiter to parse. We do have an AI prompt here listed on the bottom that can be very helpful to kind of help you parse those skills as you begin with. That example here is to provide a list of your top 10 skills for the resume that you are going into for your targeted discipline. From there, you'll copy and paste your experience from the resume, and then the AI tool, whatever you use, Gemini, ChatGPT, Copilot, will go ahead and spit out a quick 10 bullets for you of things that are very relevant for the career path that you've had up to this point. Now, nitty-gritty stuff here. So when we look at what to include on your resume, there's a couple key things that we want to highlight. First, we'll start off with the summary / header. This would be traditionally listed at the top. The header should include your first, last name, contact information, basically the best ways to get in touch with you directly. After that, usually, and this can go either way, it depends on the length of your resume. If you're having a hard time getting it onto 2 pages, this is usually one of the first things that we recommend kind of trimming. But a professional summary can be very helpful to state your goals and what you are seeking for a new position. But as we move on to your professional experience, you'll want to start to utilize the who method. Who stands for what you did, how you did it, and then the outcome of what you did, right? This is very helpful as you start to break down your experience and kind of put it down on the paper, mostly because this is one of the harder things to do as you think about your career in retro, right? You want to make sure that you take the time to really highlight the impact that your work had to the organization that you are working with, mostly because that's what speaks most effectively to a prospective employer. You'll want to take some time to describe the value add and the results that you delivered. When we think through value adds, if you were in sales, things like that, that's a lot easier to quantify, right? You can throw on X percentage of growth, hit target sales goal, and quantify that more directly. In the event that you didn't have a lot of quantifiables in your position previously and you don't have that information up front, one of the best things that you can do is take some time to think through situations specifically, or what the impact of your job was at the end of the day, right? So let's say that you were a call center representative, as an example. Oftentimes these folks will have metrics. This is maybe not like one-to-one, but In the event that you don't know what your metrics were or how you succeeded in that role with direct quantifiable information, you can use soft quantifiables at the end of sentences to illustrate the impact that you had. So you could say handled customer escalations directly to ensure a smooth customer experience while engaging with our customer service department. That last part, it highlights the actual impact of your role while not being directly quantifiable. Starting every line with an action verb is a great way to make sure that you are keeping the right tempo on your resume, so to speak. As somebody is reading it, you want them to be compelled to kind of go through your experience more directly. And so those action verbs help, they do, as you read them, kind of drive you to the next one. And just from a general formatting standpoint, most resumes are put together with these days. So in the event that you are not putting it together with action verbs, it can kind of put you on the back foot from the jump. So make sure that you start every line of those with action verbs. We have a couple examples listed here on the slide. You do want to have a minimum of 3 bullets per role. Ideally, you'd be closer to 5 or 6. Biggest reason for this, you don't want it to seem like your role had minimal impact in a lot of capacities. And so making it to that 5 or 6 bullets, that's kind of like the sweet spot where it's not too long, it's not too short, and it has plenty of buffer for people to kind of parse the various aspects of your day-to-day work experience. Lastly, being consistent with format, tense, and punctuation. We talked about this on the previous slide, just making sure that you are really going through, analyzing the resume once you have it written up for consistent, no grammar errors, making sure that all of your tenses are very consistent. And just it gives the impression that you're detail-oriented when you do that. So making sure that all of that is good to go before you start applying, very, very important to your job, to the initial stages of your job search. Now, looking at the format itself, so this is where we'll kind of get through the structure and typically what we like to see as far as a recruiting capacity in the marketplace. We talked to the header previously, so making sure that you include that at the top of the resume so it transfers to every page is very helpful. In the event that you are struggling with getting the page length to that 2 pages, it's fine to have the header just on the first page. Excuse me. As we talked about previously, header should include first and last name, contact information, so best phone number and professional email to reach you at, and then the city state that you are either currently residing in or where you are targeting for relocation in the event that that is your situation. Professional summary, we did talk about this previously as well. It should include specific keywords that you would use to describe yourself, along with a description of your experience and the position or general field that you're targeting. The goal with your professional summary should be concise statement of who you are and what you are seeking. And really, even beyond that, sometimes we found folks with great summaries to include like the impact that you would like to make. Something that kind of speaks to not just you as a person, but the way that you might interact with others. Again, having talked about the length previously, if you are having trouble getting onto those 2 pages, this is one of those areas that's a bit more optional in some capacities. Moving on from there, we'll look at the skills summary. So this should be located between that header and experience section always, whether your professional summary is there or not. This should contain all of your skills, so your technical and soft skills. We talked a little bit about how to separate those previously. Typically, we don't recommend that you do 2 tables side by side because that can be very confusing for any applicant tracking systems and can sometimes result in your resume getting disqualified before a human even gets to look at it. But we do recommend putting it in line. So you can do a traditional like skills summary and then technical skills listed under it. That helps a lot of times for a recruiter to be able to quickly parse what is like relevant in the event that they're looking for a technical professional. We do recommend that it is bulleted. This is very helpful here. Columns can be tricky again with applicant tracking systems. You don't always see as many issues with that, but the one thing that you do definitely want to stay away from here is tables. Tables are oftentimes going to get your resume automatically dinged by any kind of applicant tracking system. Moving on to your professional experience, we did talk about the who method there previously. This is another method that you can use to quantify, which is very similar in scope, which is just your actions, so what you were responsible for completing, the tasks, so the tools, processes, techniques that you might have utilized to complete that task, and then of course that quantifiable result. So once you completed that task, what was the result of that action? In the event that you have great technical experience on your resume, make sure that you take the time to quantify where you use that and what you used it for in the professional experience. It's very important, and can really help an employer get a greater understanding of not just the way that you've interfaced with these technologies, but how you would effectively implement them in whatever role you may be applying for. For the professional summary specifically, we do have a prompt included here, just to write a 3 to 4 sentence professional summary for your resume using strong action verbs with the specific text that's tied to your work experience. So again, making sure that you have some basis of that ready to copy and paste for the AI tool to work with. Very, very helpful here. It can save you a lot of time. Looking at the professional experience and just a little bit more in the way of formatting those individual bullets, we do have a couple key indicators here, just to kind of walk you through what a great bullet might look like. Starting from the left, we'll look at a bullet that maybe doesn't add a lot of value to the resume and how we can maybe tweak that to make a bit more of a compelling statement of your experience. So if we look at the one that needs improvement, if we were to say just responsible for increasing sales, that doesn't really speak a lot to the work that you did on a day-to-day basis and really doesn't give an employer a lot of insight into your methodology or how you think and how you actually helped to increase those sales. Moving on to that, the better option here, developed a new sales strategy, generating over $4,700 in revenue is a great example of quantifiable experience. This tells you exactly what you did, what you're responsible for, and then the end result of that actual task itself. So that key quantifiable, that's always what stands out in an employer's mind. Very, very important to do the best that you can with quantifiables. In the event that you're having a harder time with that, leverage AI tools with prompts such as, give me some quantifiables that may be relevant for XYZ job title, and you'll just plug in the title that was relevant for you or that you're working with at that moment. Another great example of a fully fleshed out bullet here on the right side of the slide. Cleaned and so we'll start with an action verb, right? So cleaned and transformed. These are both tells exactly what you did. They're very action oriented. It gets you compelled to move the next part of the sentence. So cleaned and transformed a large data set for analysis, right? So the actual task is being described now, or the project itself. And then we move to that metric or the results, reducing data processing time by 30% and improving overall data quality for subsequent analysis, right? So this gives very clear direction of like, my action did this tied to this project, and here was the end result of that. It really helps employers get a greater understanding of the impact that they would have to bring you on their team. And so again, we've got a couple different AI prompts listed here on the bottom for you. Feel free to continue to reference these as you do engage with the material. But prompt number 1, to rewrite your bullet points to show measurable achievements using strong action verbs for your targeted discipline. Again, making sure that you include your work experience is very helpful here. We talked about this previously, but those measurable achievements is one of the things that is a little bit harder in the event that you have not worked in a role with specific like quantifiable measurements. And thusly, AI can really help you to kind of close the gap on that specifically. Prompt number 2 here, writing 3 to 6 bullets using measurable achievements and strong action verbs for the job title that you worked in, right? So this can kind of help to get you started with the actual resume itself and detailing your professional experience. Definitely take the time as you engage with these prompts to spot check the responses that it gives you, because sometimes it can be very representative of the work that you did. Other times it won't be as representative, and you can have it on your resume, sure, but if an employer were to talk to you about it, you wouldn't really be equipped to answer that in an interview context because it's not necessarily representative of the work that you did. So definitely just make sure you audit those responses, include the things that are most relevant for you, and take the time to make sure that they are being implemented into your resume in a thoughtful way. Just a second to grab some water. And so moving on into the next section of our agenda today, we're going to talk specifically through some best practices when leveraging those AI prompts. We kind of talked a little bit about this at the end of the last slide, but the biggest thing for actually structuring those AI prompts, you want to make sure that you are being specific, right? So giving it a very specific task, try not to be vague and just give it very clear direction on what you want. Customizing the prompts can be very helpful, of course. There's a lot of templates out there for like best AI prompts to do XYZ task. Make sure that you take the time to customize that to be prescriptive to your personal situation, and include some information that is specific to the situation or context that you're in, namely including like your experience, things like that can be very helpful. Using multiple prompts can be also very helpful. So kind of like doing A/B testing with two different similar prompts to see what it gets. And then taking the best from both of those is one of the best ways that you could leverage AI currently. And in the event that it is not giving you the output that you're expecting, right, continue to, give it additional prompts immediately following that to help it kind of like fine tune what you're looking for. Editing and proofreading, of course, definitely take the time to review the responses that it gives you. AI is a very, very helpful tool. It can save a lot of time, but also there are times where it can be less helpful because it's not giving you either the right information, it's not giving you something that's relevant. And sometimes it can give you things that are just straight up wrong in those cases of like AI hallucination. So just take the time to make sure that you are really thoroughly proofing the responses it gives you before you implement into your resume. This bleeds perfectly into 5, which is to use them as a supplement for productivity instead of a replacement. They are very, very helpful tools and will save you a ton of time. However, having the baseline for it to work from is very important, and you'll only want to use it to kind of just supplement the work that you're doing instead of just using it to avoid doing the work altogether. And so looking at the actual job search prospective and how we would leverage AI in that, we would take some time to, of course, understand and analyze the job descriptions, even without AI context. So take the time to review those. And then from there, share it with an AI tool and say like, hey, give me some key insights, things that this position seems to be looking for. Make sure that, again, you're using both your brain and the computer's brain and like merging the best of both worlds there. Optimizing your resume with keywords. This is a space where an AI tool can be immensely helpful. So let's say that you are looking specifically at an opportunity that you're very interested in. You go ahead and plug that job description into AI, then you plug your resume in and say, hey, is there anything that I should add to my resume to make me a more compelling candidate for this position? That's a great example of how you can leverage AI to really be specific and target a specific opportunity. Crafting a compelling cover letter, very helpful here. Again, oftentimes, and cover letters are used a little bit more intermittently these days, but the hardest part of getting a cover letter together is starting, and that's where AI is very helpful, right? If you give it a prompt to create a cover letter for a given position, it'll at the very least give you a starting point, and then you can start to just fine tune or plug in aspects of your professional career specifically. And then lastly here, tailoring your resume for each job. We talked a little bit about this with the optimizing your resume with keywords, but AI tools can be very helpful to make slight changes or subtle tweaks to your job. And more to the point, there are tools out there currently where you can kind of plug your resume into an AI evaluation tool, and it'll give you kind of like a score base of how your resume would do for applicant tracking systems generally. Resume Worded is one of the better tools that you can use out there for that currently. So as we look at analyzing some of those job descriptions to really get into the next step of your career, right, or your dream job, making sure you take the time to identify those required skills and qualifications. AI can be very helpful for this. So oftentimes if you plug in a job description from an Indeed, a LinkedIn, just copy paste it over to Gemini, ChatGPT, Copilot, etc. It'll be able to quickly extract like key insights from there, and you can review those independently. Definitely still take the time to make sure that you read through the job description thoroughly, but it can be very helpful to just kind of get like a TLDR, or too long didn't read, of the actual job description itself. From here, take the time to review those hard skills, so those key technical competencies that are relevant for the position, the soft skills, so anything that would be tied to interpersonal connection, maybe presentation to stakeholders, you're working on XYZ size team. If it's a leadership role, very heavily specific soft skill there. So, and then the actual experience level. So how many years of experience would be needed to succeed in this position? Moving on from there, understanding the company's needs and culture. This is, again, where a combination of independent research and leveraging AI can be immensely helpful. Taking the time to research the company a bit more directly, go through their value statement, going on their website and learning a little bit more about how they position themselves in the marketplace is very helpful. AI tools can be very helpful with this as well. If you give it a prompt such as, tell me a little bit more about XYZ organization, typically that's kind of the first type of things that it'll come back with. So it'll give you some insight into the actual company, what they do, how they position themselves, and then it'll give you like a short list of links that you can review. This is one of the better use cases of AI, is quickly accessing information without having to scroll through a ton of pages and search results. So if you punch up that into a prompt, it'll give you some links or articles that are relevant for the search results that it pulled in, and you can quickly use those for reference. Looking at the job specifically, once again, those job responsibilities, very important. Typically, it can kind of help to give you some insight into the culture as well, or how this role is being positioned within the organization. So it can be very helpful there. And then lastly, the industry keywords, depending on the position that you are targeting. So if there are any keywords that are hyper relevant for the roles or the actual the position itself, this is where you can kind of ask AI and be consultative with it and learn a little bit more about the space or the industry that you're targeting. And as we look at optimizing your resume with keywords, very, very helpful for this, of course, to leverage those AI tools. We talked a little bit about resume worded for evaluation against like consistent applicant tracking systems. ATS is used very, very heavily across all organizations. And so it's very important that you take the time to get an understanding of if there are any formatting issues or if there's any barriers to getting your resume in front of a human at the end of the day. And so taking the time to run your resume through any of these AI tools that we've mentioned previously will be very, very helpful to kind of streamline at least the front end of that job search. Additionally, you can leverage AI to more effectively incorporate those keywords that are relevant for the job description. So if there's anything that it can extract from the job description specifically and you're kind of tailoring to that, it'll really help you to just kind of quickly plug those in. But again, more to the point, making sure that those keywords fit naturally within the context of your resume is more important than anything. So take the time to make sure that you are like scrutinizing that output, get a greater understanding of what it's trying to convey. That way you're also prepared to articulate that back to interviewers in the event that you do move forward from an application. So creating prompts is one of the great skills that I think is very necessary for a lot of folks to learn, especially as we kind of head into this next step of whatever the next technological evolution of this will look like. And more to the point, it's very, very helpful to have an understanding of how to tackle engaging with an AI tool, mostly to streamline and reduce frustrations of using a newer technology. And so creating the prompt specifically, we've got a couple key examples here, but we'll start with the first one, writing a resume based on this specific position at this organization and including bullet point achievements that show impact and key metrics. Again, if you were to plug this in with just no context, right, and you don't give the actual job description or anything else for the AI to latch onto, it's not going to be very productive. It's not going to give you a lot in the way of what you're seeking, but the more information that you can feed it, the better response that you will get. And so making sure that you copy paste that job description, give it the resume that you're currently working with, it can be really helpful to kind of help it to integrate it into what you have, as opposed to relying on it to create something from zero. Now, in the event that you are using it to create something straight up from scratch, just take the time again to really heavily analyze the output and get a greater understanding of what the resume itself is saying. That way, if it is relevant for you, great, you can definitely just continue to use it, no harm, no foul. But if there are things that are not relevant, this will give you the opportunity to kind of trim the fat there, make it make a little bit more sense for your career journey specifically. Number two here, writing a tailored resume for, again, the specific role at this company. Giving specific instructions here is key, right? So including a professional summary, my past 10 years of work experience with 3 to 5 bullet points per role, and incorporate the most important keywords from the job description in those achievements. So you'll see here, there's a lot of very specific guidance that comes from this prompt, right? Making sure that you give the tool indicators for how you would like the resume formatted, the total years of work experience that you are looking to articulate, right? So let's say that you've given it a resume with 15 years, but you only want those 10 years represented. You got to make sure that you quantify that to the tool, telling it exactly how many bullet points that you want per position, very helpful. And then, of course, that last piece, incorporating the most important keywords. Usually the way that an AI tool will find this is it'll look for the most frequently reoccurring keywords in a job description. And so it'll go ahead and plug those into your resume as well to help highlight the qualifications that you have that are most relevant for those. On number 3 here, rounding us out, based on this job description for this position at this company, write a resume for my past X years of work experience with 3 to 5 bullet points per role that include metrics and the most important 10 keywords from the job description. Past titles and companies were X, Y, and Z. No need to include an objective statement. So of the 3 here, this is like the best, most detailed, gives exact end-to-end instructions of what you want the tool to do, and it will yield the best output as it relates to your job search. Now, you can plug and play any piece of this that would be like slightly different based off of your work experience. But from a pure output perspective, you'll get the closest to what you desire from like the jump if you were to use this number 3 here. It's the most specific one, and more to the point, when you're going to review it, it will take you less time of like scrubbing it, removing things that aren't relevant, etc., because you've given it that guidance of exactly what you want. When we look at tailoring your resume for each position, it's recommended to have at least a handful of resumes. We call it 2 to 3 generally, that are tailored to specific job applications, especially in the event that you are either career switching or you're looking to jump into a new industry. Namely, this can be helpful to reduce time to find an opportunity, right? So in the event that you are recently upskilled in data analytics, but you're not having a lot of success finding those opportunities, if you have a resume that is more tailored to your prior experience and use that to target maybe adjacent roles to data analytics that can kind of function as that foot in the door, so to speak, but leans more heavily into your prior work experience, that's a great example here of why you would want to have 2 different resumes. You can use the data analytics one that's very focused on your technical skills and core competencies learned from any recent upskilling to find opportunities that are a bit more technical in nature. And then your alternative resume that highlights your soft skills a little bit more for positions that maybe are more well aligned with your prior background or can function as a transferable skills jumping point for you to get into the career that you're looking for. Namely, the biggest thing here is trying to increase the likelihood that you get noticed by any potential recruiter, right? So the more relevant that your job is for what, or your resume is for whatever you're applying to, the likelier it is that you will receive a call back for that opportunity. The content can be largely similar and the formatting especially can be very similar, but making sure that there's a little bit of difference in those keywords can be really helpful to kind of get you through that first step of an ATS scan. Leveraging, again, we've talked a lot about AI tools, but one of the biggest things that you can leverage it for here, of course, is really making sure that it's making those small tweaks to those keywords and really tailoring it towards the career path that you're targeting. And it can be helpful to make it so that you're not writing 2 resumes fully from scratch both ways. So very, very helpful tool to leverage in this specific scenario. So tailoring your prompts here, again, we have a 3-tiered slide here. So we'll start with number 1. This first prompt to tailor your resume to this job description for XYZ title at XYZ company, and then providing it with the tool with the prior information reference, so the actual resume itself and your job description. The AI will go ahead and compare both tools and then add keywords or subtle tweaks to your bullets to make it a little bit more relevant for the actual opportunity that you're applying to. Again, this is kind of high level. We'll be really quick. You want to make sure that you really are analyzing the output here to make sure that it's relevant for you personally. Second bullet point here, using the resume and job description below, showcase 10 relevant skills I should highlight. This is one where it's a bit better in a lot of capacities because it goes beyond the scope of just doing the work for you and highlighting those skills itself and really how you might quantify those. And it can be more educational. That's one of the best ways that you can leverage AI in a lot of capacities, is using it as an educational tool to get a greater understanding of what you may or may not be lacking in a given space. And so again, the output here will give you that output of 10 skills that you should highlight. It won't necessarily do the work for you, but it'll help to give you some insight here. And then this last bullet rounding us out, here's my current resume. How would you rewrite it if you were applying to this position at this company? Include metrics in the achievements. Again, you'll want to make sure that you provide it with the prerequisite information, but again, this will help to give you a little bit more insight into how it would rewrite it, because it'll also provide you some context for why it thinks that you should rewrite it this way. So using AI as an informative and educational tool, as opposed to just a tool that will make the changes for you, can be helpful because it will help you from a point of articulation when you are actually in that interview context, post-application. We've talked a lot about this, and obviously I've kind of highlighted some cautionary tales throughout the presentation here, but you want to take the time to really avoid those pitfalls of resume writing with AI tools. Specifically, it can't do everything for you, right? You'll have to give it the prompts and the requests that will help you with what you are looking for from the tool itself. And so with that in mind, it's very important to be specific. Of course, we've talked a little bit about specificity, making sure that you give it firm direction and guidance. Take the time to really think about your ask as you are plugging it into the tool, to make sure that you are getting the most out of it. And in the event that it's not giving you what you're looking for, right, continue to iterate on that initial ask. Don't just settle for the first output that it gives you if it's not good enough. Making sure that you include enough context for the prompt, of course, very important. If you are referencing job titles or job descriptions, make sure that you include those in the prompt. Otherwise, it won't output appropriately for what you're asking it to do. So again, giving it that context, giving it everything that it needs to give you the best answer possible. You want to make sure that you do that. And then we talked about this a little bit as well, but trying different prompts and kind of doing that A/B testing to find what works best for what you're seeking personally is very important. You're not going to always get the best output on the first try. There's a lot of tweaks, different ways that you can ask it to do things that you'll have to experiment with a little bit. So take the time to dig through those, get a better understanding of what your, get a better output for what you're looking for. This last note here, of course, job market is very competitive right now, so leveraging AI in resume writing is a very strategic move. It can give you an edge as long as you try to avoid these pitfalls very deliberately. You want to take the time to make sure that you are incorporating content from AI that is most relevant to what you are seeking. Really underscoring that here. So when we look at AI as a productive tool and kind of a pseudo partner for your job search, right? It can be a tremendous time saver, and it can help you with a lot of the front end engagement or the manual tedium of writing and rewriting and adding things to a resume. But it should not substitute one-to-one the actual resume creation process. You as a person will be able to write down and articulate your lived experience better than anything or anyone that would, plug that in just organically, right? So it's better for you to give it what it needs to give you some general output, and then make those personalized tweaks to make it easier to speak to in the long term, and make more to the point, make you more confident in your resume that it's one of the best possible resumes that you could put out there. Making sure that you take the time to double check and edit any content generated by AI before you submit it is very, very important. We've talked about this a lot in this presentation. It's very, very, I would say, critical to make sure that you are really thoroughly proofing the material that comes out, and that not only is it relevant for you, it is concise, articulate. It speaks to the things that you want to speak to when you're giving your experience to an employer. It's definitely a tool. It's not a replacement. But it is a very effective tool, and it can really save you a lot of time on the front end of your job search. So definitely a great tool to implement on the front end to help you land that next dream job.
Thank you so much, Ethan, for the amazing, amazing insight that you have provided. We are going to go ahead and get started with the QA. So we're going to start with question number one. What is your opinion on cover letters? Are they needed? How long should they be? And what do you need to be personalized for each application?
Great question. Personally, I will say cover letters are used a lot less now than they used to be. However, they can be very, very effective tools to helping your application stand out on the front end of the process. So, in the event that it's an opportunity that you are really interested in, or that you really want to help to kind of make your application pop a little bit more, I would recommend taking the time to write a cover letter. It can be, from a length perspective, we usually recommend anywhere from, I would say, 3 to 4 paragraphs, no longer than a page, really. You don't want it to be too long. It should be something that an employer can quickly get through, and more to the point, your points on your cover letter should be concise and easy to get the point across. As far as individualization, all that good stuff, you can go a couple different ways. It really depends on what you're trying to convey with your cover letter. If you're trying to convey interest in a position, or like strictly, and you're just trying to get across the point of you feel that you would be a great fit for the position, your cover letter will have a little bit of a lack of content in some ways. What speaks to employers a lot more is an indication that you've really done the research about the org and weaving that into the cover letter a little bit. So taking some time to review like their mission statement, again, press releases, any new events that the company may have participated in. That's really what can help you from an individualization standpoint for cover letter specifically.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ethan. I have a question from the audience. Is it okay to use a domain website email that you could use for your CV website?
Great question. I would say yes in most cases. Now, in the event that it's a non-traditional email format, so meaning that it does not follow like at XYZ website dot domain, or domain.com or etc. That's where it can get a little bit tricky with ATS. In that case, if it were not to follow that traditional convention, you could hyperlink it into just a text email. That way they could click that and then leverage that to be able to email you directly.
Okay, awesome. The next question is pretty technical. It says, I know multiple programming languages, R and Python. Do I put both on my resume or just programming as an umbrella term?
You would put both on your resume. So we talked a little bit about this specifically in one of the earlier slides, but separating a section for your technical skills specifically and listing each technology that you have interfaced with or are confident in your skills in is one of the better ways to ensure that your resume pops up from a keyword perspective. As an example, you might include just programming, right? But that doesn't give me, as the recruiter, a lot of insight into the actual technologies that you have touched specifically. So if you were to list out Python or things along those lines, it'll help me to understand what you have touched and what you are qualified for a lot more directly than just programming as an umbrella term.
Absolutely. Great advice. Next question from the audience. I have a really hard time quantifying past accomplishments. I'm no longer at my old job and don't have access to even an estimate of revenue created, ticket numbers resolved, response times reduced, etc. Any advice for that?
So yes, and a lot of folks find themselves in a similar position where they either didn't have access or were not given exposure to the metrics or the ways that they impacted the organization directly. Using soft quantifiables, so XYZ yielded XYZ outcome is a better way to go about that. We talked a little bit about the customer service example earlier, where the outcome ended up being improving customer experience across the board. That's one of the better ways that you can go about that. This is again an area where you can possibly leverage AI to some great effect and have it give you some soft quantifiables for the actual positions itself. So in cases where you don't have XYZ specific percentage or dollars, et cetera, lean on understanding the impact that your role had or the day-to-day operations of your role had. Were you ensuring smooth operations? How were you ensuring smooth operations? How were your communication skills impacting XYZ task for whatever project you were working on? and the end results when you were responsible for managing those projects or working with those people directly. Were they delivered on time? Were there any times where you had to manage those deadlines? Things like that, where it's not like specifically quantifiable with numbers, but can be quantified via just general communication, are the route that you'll want to go in those scenarios.
Awesome. What is the max recommended amount of bullets per role on your resume?
You'll want to stay, I would say, from a maximum perspective, we said 3 to 6 is kind of your sweet spot. From a maximum perspective, depending on how much experience you have, and again, depending on if you are having issues staying to 2 pages, I would say your maximum should be 8. 8 is a very healthy amount. It can be too much, but if you have a lot of technical experience and you want to highlight specifically the way that you interface with each of those technologies, 8 is kind of like your upper limit, that I would say.
Absolutely. I see an interesting question. I left my previous job several months ago to shift into a new industry. I've included this as another section under professional experience and called it professional development, so it doesn't look like a gap. Listing skills acquired, tools learned, etc. Is that a good approach?
Could you repeat that for me one more time?
Absolutely. I left my previous job several months ago to shift into a new industry. I've included this as another section under professional experience and called it professional development, so it doesn't look like a gap. Listing skills acquired, tools learned, etc. Is that a good approach?
Yes, absolutely. You could even, in some ways, you could list it as a career break and then just continue to list those professionals developments. But the way that you have it listed now is perfectly fine. More to the point, it gets to the forefront of addressing the gap on your resume and leaves very little room for recruiters to interpret it any way that they might, which is like, if it's not listed, they might think that you're kind of sweeping it under the rug. And so you don't want people to pay attention to that. Owning it and then owning the additional tools that you have gained to kind of keep your professional toolkits ready to rock is a great way to approach that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are there any ATS scanner websites you recommend over others? Is there an ATS simulation we can use ourselves to check if our resumes will get through a real ATS?
The tool that I have leveraged most consistently in recruiting has been resumeworded.com. It's simple, it's easy, it kind of walks you through what you are and are not missing. There are both free and paid models. The free model does get you where you need to go. And so I would say I would start there. More often than not, honestly, you can utilize a general usage AI tool to kind of help you with this as well. So you can give it the prompt to give your resume kind of a score out of 10 for ATS compliancy. And it'll go ahead and scrub it to make sure that there's no things that you should change before you apply to positions.
Absolutely. Another question. I understand that data outcomes are important, but sometimes figures such as sales or customer numbers may involve disclosing confidential company information. In such cases, what would be the best way to present them?
Great question. You don't want to get yourself into trouble in any meaningful way. So in the event that you are running into a situation where you feel that you would have to disclose information that could be perceived as confidential, I would lean more heavily into like those soft qualifications that we talked about previously. That said, there's nothing, in a lot of cases, you want it to be a hook so that you can explain the bullets a little bit more thoroughly in an interview context. And so when you're highlighting those soft qualifications, you want to give enough detail that it answers the question up front and gets you in the door to interview so that you can provide that additional context in a face-to-face or verbal meeting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Please share your insights on spending time resume tailoring versus networking for each specific job application.
Great question. Really, really great question, actually. I would say resume tailoring is immensely helpful to get you to like that recruiting jump point. However, it is more often than not better to know someone if you can. So I would say if you had to split your time, I would put more of a priority on networking and trying to get an understanding of who may be touching that position, who may be an asset to help kind of get you in the door for that position. Because at the end of the day, somebody, a person flagging your resume for consideration will get you to that recruiter's desk quicker than a resume that is like tip top perfect, right? Because at the end of the day, it's still in there with all of the other applicants. It's that you're not standing out in a meaningful way.
That's a really good question, and your response, Ethan, is unexpected. Wow. Okay, so I'm learning something. As much as I've seen you answer some of these QA questions, that's the first time that I've gotten that information from you. So that's amazing.
Yeah,
Y'all keep the questions coming. We
any
have
that you can do to like have an additional edge of somebody maybe like giving you a vote of confidence will give you a faster interview outcome at least.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have another question for you. Is it a good idea to add a job experience older than 15 years on your resume to show your background and expertise?
It depends on the length of your resume currently, and then it depends on how relevant it is to the title or the industry that you are currently seeking, right? If it is very relevant and it's kind of key or crucial to the positions that you're targeting, go ahead and keep it on. You want to try to make sure that you keep that length to those 2 pages at a maximum 3 pages. The third page has to be completely full. The thing is, oftentimes, things that you have worked on 15 plus years ago can be not detrimental, but it just doesn't add a lot to somebody who's reviewing your work experience. And thusly, it can be kind of bloat on the resume, for lack of a better term. And it can really slow down or bog down a recruiter's process. And oftentimes they have so many candidates that they're working with that if there's a barrier or something that like is perceived as a barrier even, it makes them less likely to engage with your experience in good faith. So we recommend keeping it to 10, but if there's very specifically relevant experience and you can keep your resume within those formatting guidelines, it doesn't hurt to list it now.
Awesome sauce. And Ethan, do you have any final remarks that you'd like to share to close us out?
I would say, it's a time game, right? Especially at the front end of your job search like this. Any work that you can put in on the front end to really improve your resume is crucial to minimizing the amount of time spent job searching holistically, right? So taking the extra bit of time on the front end to really prepare and be thorough and like make sure that you have the best resume possible will yield dividends in your actual job search itself. So definitely don't be, frustrated or anything like that if you feel like it's taking too long. It's all part of the process. And more than anything, patience is key. There's a lot of resumes in the market right now. And so anything that you can do to kind of give yourself an edge in that will go a long way towards minimizing the total time that you're actually job seeking.
Absolutely. I thank you so much. And I thank you, everyone. Please stay until the end. I have some important information. We'll be sending you a post-event email, which will include a recording as well as all of the resources we spoke about today. You can access our survey by using the QR code earlier in the presentation or by locating it in the email. We'll be doing a raffle with all respondents, and one of you will win a Career Circle tote bag. Make sure to like and follow us on all social media to stay up to date on all of our updates and events that are coming up. Once again, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you all leave here today feeling empowered to use these tools in your job search. We've had so much fun. Please join us for our upcoming webinars. Our next one is going to be held September the 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can view all of our events and register on careercircle.com/events. Until next time, thank you and see you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.